Good afternoon to everybody. Bonjour tout le monde. Ravi d'être ici à l'Académie militaire de la Belgique. Merci à la ministre pour son hospitalité et merci à tout le monde pour cette rencontre. I am one of the ones who ask what is military mobility. Well, military mobility is about the mobility of the military. No? It's quite tautological, but it is what it is. We have to move our military capacities. And sometimes it's difficult, and we have to make it easier. So I think it's important that the European Union has taken seriously the fact that military assets that can be in one end of Europe has to be moved to the other end of Europe because the threat is there. It can take a long, depending on the roads, depending on the railways, the bridges, the airfields. This is a very prosaic thing, but very important. And I think it's good that the European Union has put a budget line in order to improve the mobility of our military assets. I want to thank the Belgian presidency of the Council. Once again, thanks to Louis Vin, with whom those days we are sharing a lot of events, the outer space the other day, and here talking about military mobility, the European Defense Agency, because I know they have been doing important contributions to organize these high-level events. And I want to say hello to the defense ministers of Germany, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and Poland, among others, representative of the defense structure of the European Union. And I know that we will have with us also Commissioner Vălean, which is at the end the Commission who is taking care of that, because we talk about dual-use goods. The military mobility is also for the civilian mobility, thanks God. We are not going to use only for military purposes. And also, don't want to forget our friends from NATO and from the US. As I said, military mobility is about ensuring that we have the capabilities, the structures, the procedures, not only structures, physical structures, but also procedures to swiftly move troops and military equipment across our external borders, passing through our internal borders. In the European Union, we made the internal borders invisible. For ordinary citizens, they cross the borders, they don't see the borders, but they exist. And when a crisis comes, the border can become an obstacle, in particular for heavy machinery related with tragic events, which is the case of defense. And we see at that moment the Russia aggressions against Ukraine, events that happened in the far east of Europe, that in some cases will ask our capacities to be mobilized towards east, but also when we need to quickly evacuate European Union citizens in the case of a crisis. It can be in the context of our common security and defense policy action. It can be at the level of NATO or at the level of United Nations operations or in any other national or multilateral effort. It's not front page of the newspapers, but it's essential for our security and for our deterrence capacity. And we are talking those days about how do we compensate decades of underinvestment in military capabilities. Suddenly, everybody says, oh, look, we have not been investing enough in defense. And that's true. And how we compensate years and years of taking the peace dividends and using it for social welfare and for civil expenditure, which is good. Everybody prefers butter to canyons. But sometimes you don't have canyons, you don't have water. And in this case, in this particular case, today, I think the Europeans have discovered that they are facing a much more confrontational and dangerous world. And to start with the prosaic things, it applies to military mobility, where also we need to mend years of neglect and underinvestment. I've been Minister of Public Transport in Spain for 6 years, and when we were building roads and railways and airports, I never had in mind, and my military never made me aware that these roads and these railways could be used in some cases to allow the passage of heavy armored vehicles, which has a weight, which has a hole, it has a speed, and they have a specific requirement that don't have 4x4. I never been told by the militaries, no, take care, this bridge will never support the passage of a Leopard. The Leopard is too heavy, or the road is too narrow. And now we realize that these things has to be moved. By the way, I wonder how Spain would move the Leopard tanks, which certainly are not useful to fight against France or Portuguese invasion. Certainly not. They are inside Spain, but they are not being conceived to fight against an invasion from the Pyrenees or from the Tajo River. They have to be moved somewhere else if we want to use them. And how do we move? I think that since the end of the Cold War, all member states stop thinking and looking after the military requirements for transport infrastructure. We stopped thinking about that because it was not on our imagination. It was not on the radar screen, not something that a military has to take care of because it will not happen. And they were used, for example, there is no signpost indicating the maximum payload of bridges. I never seen one. But, you know, this is necessary in case that some heavy machinery or heavy military capacity have to move. We have different infrastructural legacies. For example, different rail gauges. In order to prevent invasion from the neighbor, the best thing to do is to have a different gauge for the train so that the enemy cannot use the train to come into your territory. But now the problem is not the enemy who wants to enter into your territory, it's you who want to go out to your territory. And it requires to make complex capacities in order to change the gauge from one network to another. Or rules, different rules in different borders that makes difficult to move across borders. And this means delays, some things weeks of delays to move our troops. This is the problem. We cannot afford this situation. We have to be fast and robust on changing it. And then comes the issue of cross-border permission, logistics, and requirements, which rarely attract political attention. And that's why it's important that this event today to spotlight on the ongoing work on military mobility. The problem is clear. Well, which is the solution? Or what are we doing in order to try to look for a solution? Since 2018, the EU has taken actions in this domain. I start participating on the debates at the European Union Council on the financial perspective in 2019, 2020, and the word of military mobility appeared together with the European Peace Facility. And I have to say that when the moment came to cut, because the expenditure was too big, there were some things that were sacrificed to the economic balance, and military mobility was one of them. The initial demand, the initial request, was severely cut in order to balance the budget, and now maybe we regret it. But it was in 2019, 2020. Nobody could imagine a war in our borders. And yes, military mobility is important, but, and I can witness that this was cut quite a lot. But at least it existed. And we have started developing a plan in coordination with NATO. This plan had to take investment decisions. For that, the European Defence Agency has been working on harmonizing and simplifying cross-border procedures. And we have spent 1.5 billion in transport infrastructure, which certainly are dual-use transport infrastructures, and co-funded about 100 military mobility projects in 21 countries. So we have to summarize what we have done is to spend 1.7 billion in 95 military mobility projects in 21 countries. But the current situation with this war against Ukraine and multiple crises around the world show us that certainly is not enough. And in November 22, we raised our level of ambition with another plan, Military Mobility 2.1, promoting a whole of government approach, connecting the work on infrastructure, regulatory aspects, with capability developments, resilience and preparedness and partnership. We can build bridges and great harbors and airports, but we also need the lift capabilities to effectively use them. For example, facing cyber attacks or sabotage that can effectively block the military use of civilian and dual-use infrastructures. And in time of war, the military needs to have a priority access and to be able to rely on commercial transport providers. Most of the time, the armies don't have the capacity to transport everything quickly. They need to look for civilian actors that may have, the access that could provide our armies with the transport capacity that they can not have. We have PESCO, our permanent structural cooperation, that has proved to be an important framework to advance on military mobility. We have a PESCO project led by Netherlands. I am sure that the Dutch minister, my friend Hacia, will say more on that. But other PESCO projects are also relevant. For example, a network of logistic hubs or an outsized cargo. We have done progress, but I think we cannot be satisfied. We need to work faster and harder to keep up with the deteriorating environment. And this brings me to the third point, the work ahead. I started defining the problem, then I explained what we have done. Now, and this is the most interesting, what are we going to do? Or what we would like to do. First, we need to renew the military mobility pledge. The first pledge, 2018, set out a clear-cut commitments that led to improvements at the national level. I said providing permissions for cross-border movements within a maximum of 5 working days. Time now has come to translate our lessons from the Russia war of aggression against Ukraine into a new and more ambitious pledge. And this will require a clear commitment at the ministerial level, because it's the member states who have to do it. We have to identify the priority transportation corridors on the European geography, to support them by logistic hubs, and it has to be done in cooperation with the member states, DG Move, the EU military staff, in order to identify the corridors and the hubs. But we need a real member states engagement at the expertise and political level. We have also to invest on increasing the resilience of our transport system. There is a lot of problems, from cyber attacks, man-made, climate change, well, also man-made, but with a direct impact that is not going to be possible to stop immediately. It's already there. And the challenging of the networks, when it can be a clear, crowded situation between the civilians and military use in a critical moment. For that, we need to increase our preparedness. And for that, we need exercises. We need to exercise ourselves, trying to simulate an hypothetical moment in which we have to face a reality. We have to test our readiness to identify hurdles and bottlenecks. Military mobility was already part of our tabletop exercises, but we need to go beyond and include military mobility elements also in our live exercises to test the capacity of our procedures in real lifetime situation. We did that in Spain on the live exercise that we did in September in Rota. We will do again next year to test our cross-border movement procedures and the resilience of our military mobility networks against cyber threats. This will be especially important for our rapid deployment capacity, because it has to be rapid, it has to be able to move quickly, otherwise it will not be rapid. And to make a better use of PESCO. PESCO, sometimes someone told me, c'est la belle au bois dormant. It's a great invention of the treaties, but it's taking difficult times to become a reality. It's becoming a reality, but we have to make better use of the framework that PESCO is providing us. We should put more ambitious and concrete proposals on military mobility in the PESCO framework, and this has to be done on the next strategic review of PESCO. Please take note of that. On the next strategic review of PESCO, military mobility has to have a more important role. We have to work more together. I know it's easy to say and difficult to do. We have to do more together at national level among European Union institutions. I mean, between the European Defence Agency and intergovernmental body, the External Action Service with its military staff, and the Commission. Commission and Council member states have to work more together and less in silos. We have to work more among member states. And one concrete example, later today, the ministers of Germany, the Netherlands, and Poland will sign a letter of intent to create an harmonized corridor. This is our geography, and geography matters for the neighbors. It's a little bit ridiculous to discuss military mobility between Greece and Portugal, for example, because certainly it's not going to be the most important scenarios. In any case, identify a corridor can only be by plane. But there are clearly no, I don't know how to say no in English, no? poles in which military mobility will create a problem if the situation becomes worse. And certainly between Germany and Poland, a lot of military mobility problems can arise if the situation becomes worse. And then we have to work more with NATO and other key strategic partners. When I'm saying NATO, I'm saying US, I'm saying Canada, Norway. It has to be a flagship in our cooperation between NATO and the European Union. It has to be a strategic that both organizations are already 95% identical, but it's still something missing. And that brings me to the end, saying that we live in a turbulent geostrategic environment. I was running here to talk with you, coming out of a meeting about the Sahel, and military mobility is not something nice to have. And if you don't have, nothing happens. It's a must. And when something is a must and you don't have it, it means that you have to be acting faster and better. Infrastructure upgrades must be expedited. Technology has to be adopted, accelerated, and collaborative efforts has to be intensified. Our plans should not be something that lives in a paper. It has to be in concrete implementation, on the ground. Inaction may have serious consequences. Today, the security and stability of the European Union is at stake. And it's not a joke. I said that when I presented the strategic compass. I said Europe is in danger, and people smile, saying, oh, this is a marketing sentence in order to sell the product. Little by little, people are taking more and more conscious that certainly we are facing challenges, turbulence, and dangers, and we have to prepare for that. So thank you to Belgium for organizing this event. Thank you to the European Defense Agency, and thank you to all of you. I think it is not the first time. It will be not the last opportunity to discuss about military mobility, and I hope the exchanges today will help all of us to imagine a new ambitious, to put in the table new ideas and to make these ideas a reality. Thank you very much for your attention.